Okay. It looks like we are good to start, Denise.
All right, good morning. Thank you for bearing with us for a few minutes. Comcast internet is down in my neighborhood and we've been scrambling trying to find a way to keep going. So I think we're there. We are joining today to talk about the American Rescue Plan, most notably the provisions for the COBRA subsidy and the emergency paid leave. Melissa is joining me. She's our employee benefits department manager. She's going to handle the slides and such. So we're going to try to team up here and see if we can still get the presentation in front of you. So Melissa, I would be on the second slide. So this is our disclaimer. Just, of course, we are waiting to get a lot of guidance yet on both of these subjects, and we know the Department of Labor is going to do that for us. In the meantime, of course, we have our legal counsel to consult with, and then I like to say, if you've been in any presentations with me recently, everything is subject to change, probably will, and maybe has while we're talking even. So more to come. Next slide. So first, we're going to tackle the COBRA subsidy. What plans are covered? This applies to group health plans, including medical, dental, and vision that are subject to federal COBRA or to a mini-state COBRA plan. We do want to note that while there are approximately 40 states that have mini-COBRA programs, Michigan does not. So if you are strictly an Michigan employer and you are not subject to federal COBRA, this subsidy does not apply to you. If you are subject to federal COBRA, meaning you have 20 or more employees on more than 50% of business days in the previous calendar year, this subsidy would be applicable to you. It applies to small employer plans, small government plans, and church plans that are not subject to federal COBRA if they are subject to a state mini-COBRA law. It does not apply to cafeteria plans and Section 125, cafeteria plans through Section 125, I apologize, and health flexible spending arrangements. They are not covered by the subsidy. Next slide. So individuals, who's eligible as an individual? If they're a qualified beneficiary of the group health plan and are eligible for COBRA continuation coverage because of their involuntary termination or a reduction in hours. Keep in mind, if the involuntary termination is due to gross misconduct, they would not be eligible for COBRA. We certainly know that gross misconduct is very difficult to define. If you have someone that you feel you're letting go due to gross misconduct and therefore would not be eligible for COBRA, we would recommend that you have a conversation with someone regarding that, hopefully an attorney, or we can try to help as well. Not available for individuals who voluntarily leave their jobs. So if they quit, decide they don't want to work for you anymore, they would not be eligible for the COBRA subsidy at that point. If they are eligible for Medicare or another group health plan, they would not be eligible as well. So that one is interesting to us because if you get terminated from your job or laid off and you go find another job, you may have a wait period, or you have the period where you're looking for the job, and during that period, of course, you would be eligible for the subsidy. As soon as you're eligible for a group health plan under a new employer, you would no longer be eligible for the subsidy, and that is on the honor system. So employees need to report back to you that they are now eligible for other coverage. Even if they are eligible for it, but don't elect it, they lose eligibility for the subsidy. So it's not if you joined another health plan, it's just strictly if you're eligible for it. So if an individual does not self-report, they can face a penalty of $250 or 110% of the subsidy received if they did not report in an intentional way. And again, we're not exactly certain what that intentional means, but that could be a lot more money than the $250. Next slide. The American Rescue Plan Act allows individuals to elect subsidized COBRA if they become eligible for COBRA due to involuntary termination or reduction in hours starting April 1st and ending September 30th. So this all takes effect April 1st. However, so those are newly eligible people for COBRA. However, there's a provision for individuals that either are on COBRA right now from a previous eligibility election, or they previously declined COBRA after becoming eligible. Again, still due to involuntary job termination or reduction in hours, but anyone that is still within their COBRA election period, generally 18 months. So if I lost my job last March and I didn't elect COBRA coverage and I still don't have insurance, I'm still within my 18-month window, I can pick COBRA up for the first time starting April 1st, and I can start the coverage April 1st and move forward. So this is not a situation where they have to go back and pay for all of the months missing. That's what we believe today. So if you had previously elected COBRA coverage, but then discontinued that coverage prior to April 1st, an individual could pick back up the coverage as well. The election period begins April 1st and runs until 60 days after the date the individual receives notice from the plan of the availability of the COBRA subsidy. So they have 60 days to make that election. Next slide. Coverage under the ARPA election extension starts with the first period of coverage beginning on or after April 1st. It continues through the end of the individual's COBRA coverage period. So an example again, if my 18 months runs out somewhere in the middle of the April 1st to September 30th, the subsidy would stop, my eligibility for COBRA would still stop. This doesn't give an extension of COBRA eligibility. It gives an extension of coverage that you can pick back up and have paid for, but you have to be eligible for COBRA in order to qualify. The individual's COBRA coverage period is the period that would have applied when they elected the continuation coverage when first eligible following the initial qualifying event. So that sounds really confusing, but basically our guidance is that you're looking at an employee that is still in an open eligibility window. We're eligible due to an involuntary termination or a reduction in hours, and their 18-month period has to cross over the subsidy period starting April 1st, or a new eligibility that starts April 1st, of course. So if someone loses their job starting after April 1st and moving forward, they would be eligible for the subsidy. Next slide. There's a provision in the American Rescue Plan Act to allow the individuals to make a coverage change at the employer's option. This isn't mandatory, so this would be up to you as the employer. They can make a change to a different health plan. So if you offer more than one health plan and the employee wants to make a change, they would be allowed to do that within 90 days of receiving notice of this option. But they cannot choose an option that has a higher premium than their previous coverage. So if you have two plans and one has a higher cost and that's the plan they're on and they'd like to switch to the lower cost plan, that would be an option. Next slide. The notice requirements, we are waiting from the Department of Labor to give us the new notices we are waiting for the general notice, which will let employees know or individuals know that they're eligible for the COBRA subsidy. The Department of Labor's deadline for issuing that is April 10th. They had 30 days from the signing of the act. And it would need to go to anybody who becomes newly eligible for COBRA, and then also for anyone who may have previously elected COBRA coverage, or anyone that had been eligible and dropped their coverage or declined the coverage by May 31st. So while we're struggling and we're feeling a little nervous about compliance with this, we want to make sure that we understand we do have some time, and we can't really do anything until the Department of Labor gives their guidance. Next slide. In addition to the general notice, the Act requires a notice of the expiration of the subsidy, including that the premium in that notice needs to include that the premium assistance will expire soon with a prominent display of the expiration date, and that the individual may be eligible for coverage without the premium assistance. So if they're on the coverage, they can continue at their own cost. Plans are not required to issue an expiration notice to those whose subsidy is expiring because they become eligible for another group health plan or Medicare. At that point, they're supposed to notify us. The notice must be provided no more than 45 days and no less than 15 days from the date the assistance will end, and the Department of Labor deadline for issuing this is April 25th. Next slide. And we have the tax credits. So who is responsible for that? The entity that advances the COBRA premium is what the Act says is eligible for the employer tax credit. So that would include multi-employer union plans, a plan sponsor of a self-funded group health plan, or a fully insured plan that is subject to federal COBRA. So the plan sponsor would be the employer in those cases, or the insurer or the insurance company, whichever one you look at that, of all other fully insured plans, so those not subject to federal COBRA, for example. It looks like the tax credit includes the 2%. Next slide. So there's some other little considerations or nuances that have come to our mind or our attention. An individual who receives or has been approved to receive unemployment for any week in 2021 would not be required to pay for the coverage through the marketplace or the exchange. There's a 100% premium tax credit. The individual has to provide an attestation and documentation of the unemployment insurance benefit in order to receive that. The reason we're mentioning that is there may be some of the individuals that are already going to be eligible for that, and for them to make a decision to jump over to the COBRA coverage instead might not be in their best interest. It really wouldn't be our place to decide that, but it is worth mentioning to employees, and of course, I think there will be more information on that to share as well. But an individual will need to decide which is the best benefit. One of the examples we talked about in our team is if you have the scenario like I mentioned earlier where an employee loses their job, maybe there's a layoff and they go look for another job and are in a waiting period, and knowing that they have coverage coming, our kind of initial thought was it may make sense to take advantage of the subsidy for that period of time rather than going out to the exchange and then again changing plans another time when they join their new employer's plan. So that was an example that we talked through on our team. How does this coordinate with the disaster relief? We know right now that we received guidance on the outbreak period. That's basically 1 year on an individual basis. So if I'm waiting and thinking I might go back and join COBRA coverage as an example, from a year ago, I have to pay for all of those premiums to get caught up. The question is, can I elect back, pay for those premiums, and also get the subsidy. We think yes, but we think there is a certain amount of guidance that will have to come out on that yet. One of the questions is, if I take advantage of the COBRA subsidy and then at the end of the disaster, my outbreak period prior to that, I want to still go back and elect, even though I didn't, to get the COBRA subsidy, could I do that? And again, we don't know the answer to that, but that is something just to think about in the back of our minds. The other thing that occurred to us is the 2%. So we're paying our bills as employers. The third-party administrators are not collecting from individuals, and the individuals are usually the ones that pay the 2%. So are our third-party administrators going to waive that 2%? Are they going to send us a bill? That's something that you'll want to know so that you can take the appropriate amount in your tax credits. And then we want to note that the COBRA subsidy would not apply during FFCRA leaves because the employees are entitled to maintain their health insurance during those leaves under the same terms and conditions as if they were employed. Next slide. So now we want to touch on the emergency paid sick leave and the extended family medical leave. Of course, that was passed almost a year ago in March. Under the FFCRA, there was an optional extension when that expired the end of 2020 to pick that back up in January and carry it through the end of March. And that's where we're at today, where that would have expired the end of March. The American Rescue Plan offers an extension starting April 1st through September 30th. This again is optional. The January to March 31st was optional for employers to continue. You could get the tax credits in the same manner as you did in 2020. And that will be the case again for this extension. So generally the same terms and conditions as the original FFCRA. There are a few things that have changed, and we'll talk about those in each area. So let's start with the emergency paid sick leave. Next slide. So the changes to the emergency paid sick leave. Eligible for the emergency paid sick leave for the following purposes. These were added: to get the COVID vaccine and to recover from any related side effects. When seeking or waiting for a COVID-19 test result, if exposed, or if the employer has asked for a test. Employees will be eligible for a new bank of leave on April 1st. So this is that 80 hours for full-time employees, prorated for part-time employees. So the 2 weeks of emergency paid sick leave did not reset in January of 2021, but April 1st, there is a reset. Any unused hours from the previous bank would not carry forward. So it's basically a reset for April 1st. Employers cannot provide emergency paid sick leave in a manner that favors highly compensated employees or full-time employees, or looking at how long someone has worked for you. Next slide. Changes to the extended family medical leave can now be used for any emergency paid sick leave reason. That's a big change. Originally, you could only use the extended family medical leave for childcare reasons. So now it's the emergency paid sick leave plus the extended family medical leave for any of the reasons that were originally described, and then the new reasons that we added to the emergency paid sick leave. The 10-day unpaid waiting period has been eliminated, which increases the cap for the tax credits from $10,000 to $12,000, because that takes into effect the daily cap of $200 on the calculation of the pay. So that remains the same. So an employee could receive up to $12,000 on that. What's unclear on this one was whether the employee would be eligible for a new 12-week period. So again, the Department of Labor is going to have to give us guidance on that. Do we still look at any original FMLA time that an employee has used. Does that take away from the 12 weeks? Do we look at the previous used 12 weeks under the FFCRA, the extended FMLA? And we know that we need to hear more about that in order to figure out how to implement that in our workplaces. And again, employers cannot provide this in a manner that favors highly compensated employees, full-time employees, or that is based on how long employees have worked for you. Next slide. The tax credits are still available, same terms and conditions as the FFCRA, the original FFCRA, except for the increased aggregate cap for the extended family medical leave, available between April 1st and September 30th. Sorry, put 31st there. Tax credits are available as follows. So the tax credit for emergency paid sick leave when used for self-care reasons is up to 100% of the employee's regular pay with a limit of $511 per day. As you can see, that hasn't changed. The credit available for emergency paid sick leave when used for the care of another is up to 2/3 of the employee's regular rate of pay with a limit of $200 per day. That has not changed as well. And the credit for the extended family medical leave is up to 2/3 of an employee's regular pay with a limit of $200 per day and a cap of $12,000 per employee. So the $200 per day hasn't changed, just the cap of $12,000 instead of $10,000. Next slide. So that's what we know. Next slide, there are some things that we're waiting for. Of course, the Department of Labor's notices and guidance on the COBRA subsidy. We know that along with the model notices, the Department of Labor will issue their guidance, and they will answer some of these questions that are pending for all of us. We are looking for the IRS guidance on the COBRA subsidy tax credits. And I believe that the Department of Labor will update their FFCRA FAQs. I don't know if any of you have used those previously or read through those. I think they're up to 105 or so. It's more than 100 questions asked and answered there, and I believe they have done a pretty good job offering guidance for us there. So I think we'll see some additional guidance related to the emergency paid sick leave and the extended family medical leave on that FAQ. The other thing that has occurred to us just as an insurance provider and taking care of all of you, our clients, is we're going to need to know from our third-party administrators how to implement this. We are looking for guidance from the carrier partnerships. Melissa, my team member that's also on this call, has been reaching out to them and having conversations on the implementation of that. What do we do to get the employee reinstated? How is that going to look? Are there going to be changes to the websites? So that's all things that we are working on while we're waiting for the guidance from the government agencies. There are things that we're working on behind the scenes as well to make sure that we can help you all in the implementation of this program. Next slide. So if you have any questions, you're welcome to touch base with us, to reach out. We're happy to help. If you had any questions during the presentation and you put them in the chat, we will send out a response to those questions. In addition, we will also email the presentation, the recording of the presentation, to all of you. And then, of course, we hope to catch anyone that was unable to attend. So if you had team members that you'd like to share this presentation with, you're welcome to do so. Thank you for joining us. We apologize for the technology snafu at the beginning there. Hope you have a great day, and we will be in touch as we hear more.